I obtained a miraculous potion. Whoever drinks it will become hopelessly in love with me. Without the slightest hesitation, I tilted my head back and drank it all. This time, I chose to love myself. I love you, myself. See you tomorrow. Chapter 1. In my previous life, after my husband, Santiago, cheated on me, I accidentally came into possession of a bottle of potion, a transparent little bottle, filled with a blue liquid. On the bottle was a line of faded writing. Whoever drinks this water will become irreversibly obsessed with loving the giver of the potion, like clutching at the last straw for survival. I went madly all in, betting every shred of hope on this mysterious, originless potion. I mixed it into Santiago's coffee. The effect was immediate. He gradually distanced himself from the person he had cheated with and refocused his attention on me. He began remembering our anniversaries and bringing flowers home. When he held me as we fell asleep at night, he whispered those long-lost sweet words. It felt as though we had truly returned to the days of passionate love. We became the couple everyone envied once more. Everyone thought Santiago loved me deeply. Only I knew that his love for me did not come from his own choice. It came from mine. I was the one who made him drink the potion that forced him to love me. When he hugged me and kissed me, images of his indecent, intimate photos would always surface in my mind. When he spoke to me softly, I found myself wondering whether he had once said the same beautiful words to someone else. What was even worse was the fear that followed me like a shadow. Every time he spoke with another woman because of work, every time his phone screen lit up, every time one of his former flings appeared, alarm bells rang wildly in my head. Had the potion worn off? Was he about to leave me again? I became neurotic, so much so that even I felt like a stranger to myself, oversensitive, suspicious, constantly on edge. A momentary distraction from Santiago, a slightly indifferent response, was enough to send me into a frenzy of speculation about whether he still loved me. Later, I became pregnant. The joy lasted only an instant, followed immediately by overwhelming dread. What if one day the potion really lost its effect? If Santiago turned back into the man who despised me, what would I do? What would happen to my child? Caressing my still flat belly, I realized for the first time, I was living inside a magnificent yet fragile prison woven by my own hands. I began losing handfuls of hair. Prolonged anxiety wrapped tightly around me, gnawing away at my nerves bit by bit. Even when Santiago tried to comfort me, I could no longer naturally sink into the warmth he offered. The essence of love is the surrender of free will. It is the clear-eyed fall of two free souls after they meet, and I had already poisoned that very possibility. Then Santiago casually said, "Honey, it looks like you've gotten a few more fine lines around your eyes lately." Such a light, careless remark was enough to shatter me instantly. I couldn't focus, kept making mistakes at work, my entire being stretched taut like a string about to snap. In the end, after continuous emotional upheaval, the child I had never met left me. Santiago held me and whispered words of comfort. But in that moment, what surged in my chest was not gratitude, it was regret. I regretted it. I regretted clinging like a beggar, using underhanded means to keep a man who had already changed his heart. So in this life, when that familiar blue potion appeared before me once again, I didn't hesitate at all. I twisted off the cap, lifted my head, and swallowed it all. The liquid was slightly bitter as it slid down my throat. Rather than exhausting myself trying to hold on to a cheating man, it was better to love myself properly. I love you, myself. See you tomorrow. Chapter 2. After drinking that miraculous potion, I stood quietly for a while, carefully sensing any changes in my body. Nothing seemed different. Thinking back to how the potion had worked on Santiago in my previous life, I didn't doubt its authenticity. Perhaps some changes were never meant to be visible to the naked eye. As I was thinking this, my stomach suddenly growled. Right, I hadn't eaten anything since my rebirth. I walked out of the bedroom. Under the warm lights of the living room, a table filled with lavish dishes came into view. I froze for a moment, then remembered. The point in time I'd been reborn to happened to be the 6th anniversary of my marriage with Santiago. How had I spent this day in my previous life? I had dressed up meticulously and gone to Santiago's company. In front of everyone, I begged him to come home for dinner that night. When I walked out of his office, the looks people gave me were filled with mockery and pity. But at the time, I was overjoyed just because Santiago had agreed, with no room in my heart to care about anyone else. After returning home, I cooked a whole table of dishes. All of them were Santiago's favorites: pickled fish stew, beef brisket with potatoes, steamed fish, stir-fried vegetables, steamed seafood. I used every trick I had, trying to capture Santiago's stomach with my cooking. Looking at the full table of results, I even felt a faint sense of accomplishment, fantasizing about the appreciation or emotion in his eyes when he pushed the door open. And the result? I sat alone on a cold chair for the entire night. Santiago spent the evening with his mistress. That was the gift he gave me for our 6th anniversary. That long night of collapse was what finally pushed me to use that potion, because I could no longer endure waiting alone. Thinking about it now, what was I lonely for? Didn't I still have myself? Now, looking at the same table of dishes, my feelings were completely different. No anticipation, no anxiety, only the purest need remained. I was hungry. Chapter 3. I took out a bottle of vintage red wine from the liquor cabinet, one I'd bought on a trip to a private winery. The wine poured into a crystal glass, the dark red liquid gleaming under the light. I took a sip, and the rich fruity aroma bloomed in my mouth. After swallowing, I couldn't help clicking my tongue twice. What a good wine. Me, myself, I've really never treated you badly. My gaze returned to the table of dishes. I frowned. Steamed, blanched, low salt, low oil. How was any of this food I actually loved? Just to accommodate Santiago's taste. I, a born and raised Southerner, hadn't even made a single proper spicy dish. I slapped my thigh hard. That's right. Who do I need to accommodate now? It was already past 8 in the evening, yet I was suddenly bursting with energy. I reheated the pickled fish stew, splashing it with sizzling chili oil and generous amounts of Sichuan peppercorns. I reseasoned the steamed seafood, piling on thick minced garlic and bright red chopped chilies. Still not satisfied, I even made a plate of my absolute favorite, spicy diced chicken. A table full of blazing red, fiery dishes. The heat filled the entire kitchen. I refilled my wine glass and sat back down at the table. A slice of fish drenched in chili oil went into my mouth, so satisfying it made me want to stomp my feet. Then a shrimp coated in garlic and chili, salty, fresh, and spicy, shooting straight to the top of my head. The spicy chicken was crispy and numbing, and paired with a sip of wine, it was pure bliss. This feeling was unbelievably exhilarating. Just as I was eating with abandon, sweat forming on my forehead from the spice, the phone lying beside me suddenly lit up with a new message. It was from Santiago's assistant, also one of Santiago's affair partners. Girl, you haven't seen my WeChat moments yet, have you? I picked up a piece of spicy chicken and put it into my mouth, chewing slowly as I casually tapped open her moments. The latest post had been uploaded 10 minutes ago. In the photo, 2 hands were tightly interlaced, the background being my favorite upscale restaurant. The ambiguous atmosphere spoke for itself. I recognized Santiago's hand at a glance. I had compared my own hand against it countless times before. Long fingers, distinct knuckles, and a wedding ring mark that hadn't completely faded yet. Expressionless. I tapped a like. Very soon, that moment's post disappeared. Immediately after, a new one popped up. Oh no, I casually posted earlier and my boyfriend saw it. He says he's punishing me by not letting me sleep tonight. So shy ing. I put my phone down. There was indeed a faint sting in my chest. My once full appetite was inevitably affected a little, but not because of that man and woman. It was for myself. I set down my chopsticks and, facing the air, began a serious self-reflection. Me, yourself, you worked so hard cooking a whole table of food you actually like. And now you can't eat just because of someone else's WeChat post? Are you worthy of the you who spent half the day busy in the kitchen? Worthy of this good wine? Worthy of your own stomach? Eat. Now. Look at you, you're so skinny you'll topple over if the wind blows. Your weight is about to drop below 80 pounds. Do you even know that? Santiago is over there cuddling his little lover, being all lovey-dovey. And here you are, staring at good food and getting sentimental? Me. Yourself, you are not allowed to treat yourself like this. Understand? After finishing my self-education, I took a deep breath and pressed down the sour ache in my chest. I picked up a large piece of fish and stuffed it into my mouth, chewing hard. TSK, 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 so good. That's more like it. Me. Just as I was nearly done eating, the phone on the table vibrated again. It was my mom calling. I had just pressed the answer button when, before I could say a word, her scolding came crashing down. Freya! So what if Santiago cheated? Will it kill you to turn a blind eye? Which capable man doesn't fool around outside? I don't care what method you use, crying, begging, pretending you don't know, you absolutely cannot let go of Santiago. This golden son-in-law. Do you hear me? If you keep making a fuss like this and he really divorces you, what are you going to do then? He's a big boss now, an entrepreneur. You just need to cling tightly to the title of wife. You're thinking about monopolizing him entirely every day. Are you out of your mind? Santiago is so outstanding. Isn't it perfectly normal for him to have a few lovers? Just behave yourself as a rich wife. Enjoy the good life. Why are you meddling in so much? Chapter 4. I gripped my phone. My fingertips icy cold, a sense of absurdity clogging my chest. Something I'd done recently must have reached my parents' ears. In truth, I hadn't done anything that outrageous. At least, compared to what Santiago had done to me, it barely counted. At most, on the day I found out about his affair, I smashed the car he'd bought for his mistress. At most, I stormed into his company and wrecked his office in front of all his employees. Or when I learned he was attending a gala with his lover under the guise of charity. I showed up in the most eye-catching red dress and, in front of everyone, slapped both him and the woman beside him, hard. I thought that if I made him lose face, humiliated him completely, he'd understand that betrayal came with consequences. But I was wrong. In his world, in his social circle, cheating was an unspoken privilege. No one condemned him for it. Instead, they looked at me with pity or mockery, then patted Santiago on the shoulder and advised him. Just divorce her. Why stay married to a crazy woman? I didn't want a divorce, and so, my madness became his excuse to cheat even more brazenly. He started staying out all night, deliberately carrying traces of other women back with him just to provoke me. He couldn't control me, so he exaggerated everything and fed it to my parents. He knew their weak points and their values all too well, using them to suppress me, discipline me, force me to face reality. So when the familiar well-meaning advice came again through the phone, the rage and grievance I'd bottled up for so long finally exploded. I snapped into the receiver, my voice sharp. What do you mean it's normal to have a few lovers? He cheated. He betrayed our marriage. And he's somehow in the right? What the hell do you know? The voice on the other end shot up. You ungrateful brat, your fate is cheap. Being able to marry a man like Santiago is a blessing you earned over 8 lifetimes. Don't be so damn unappreciative. I'm telling you, if you dare make trouble again, dare talk about divorce or grievances again, we'll pretend we never had a daughter like you. Your father and I will act like you're dead. Disgusting. You have a perfectly good life and still insist on ruining it. They finished speaking and hung up. My trembling hands set the phone down on the table. My whole body shook uncontrollably. It felt as though a massive stone was crushing my chest, heavy, suffocating, leaving me unable to breathe. 2 lifetimes. In the last one, I listened. I chose endurance. In this one, I thought rebirth meant release, a brand new beginning. But the blade wielded by those closest to me still struck the exact same old wound, only deeper. The grievances of 2 lifetimes. The loneliness of never being understood. The vicious accusations hurled by my own family. All of it surged up, choking my throat. Everyone said Santiago was young and successful. Men, especially rich men, having a few women around them was normal. But who still remembered when he was starting his business, running into walls everywhere, his cash flow on the verge of collapse? It was me who took out every cent I'd saved over years of frugal living and silently placed it in front of him. I comforted him, saying, if we lose it, we lose it. I can earn more. Back then, we ate instant noodles in a cramped rental apartment. He held my hand, eyes brighter than stars, and swore he'd never let me down in this lifetime. I picked up my wine glass and walked barefoot to the floor-to-ceiling window. Outside, the city glowed in streams of light. dazzling like a galaxy. Santiago's mistress flaunting herself on social media hadn't hurt me, but my parents' every "this is for your own good" cut at my heart like a dull knife. My eyes suddenly burned. I tilted my head back and blinked hard, trying to force the heat away. I raised the glass and drained it in one go, the sharp burn followed by a long, bitter aftertaste. So what if I misjudged someone? Admitting my poor judgment back then wasn't that hard. It was okay. In my last life, I'd been blinded, tying all my worth to a single man. I lost myself and suffered a complete defeat. This time, as long as I didn't make the same foolish mistake again, that was enough. Me, myself. I murmured to the flow of traffic outside the window. Hoarse, slow, word by word. I allow you to get hurt in love. I allow you to give your whole heart and then realize you love the wrong person. I allow you to feel wronged and want to cry because your family doesn't understand you. I allow you to cry, to break down, to be sad and fragile in this very moment. After speaking, I hugged my knees tightly, as if finally breaking free of all restraints. I cried out loud. My sobs echoed through the empty living room, hoarse, ugly, yet unbearably real. I didn't know how long I cried, until I was utterly exhausted, left with nothing but quiet hiccups. I lifted my head, my face a mess of tears, my voice nasal. So cry if you need to. It's nothing serious. I won't despise you, right? Me? Outside, the city lights still shone brilliantly, just as I was about to be swallowed by sorrow. My phone rang. I jolted as if waking from a long dream. Staggering, I rushed to the table, fumbling as I grabbed my phone. The screen's light stabbed painfully into my swollen eyes. I didn't want anyone to hear how miserable I was. I sniffed hard, wiped my tear-soaked face with my sleeve, then gulped down a large mouthful of water from the glass on the table. After clearing my throat, I finally pressed answer. Hello? Freya. It was my friend's voice. Have you heard? North City's forecasting a high chance of auroras soon. It's rare. Want to go see them? If you can capture a whole series of aurora shots, that'd be amazing. Auroras. As a photographer, chasing and freezing the beauty of the world is both professional instinct and calling, partly to prove my skill, partly to record fleeting beauty. In my last life, I missed the auroras and so many other sights just to hold on to my relationship with Santiago. My heart tightened at the thought. Absolutely, I blurted out, my voice bright and urgent. Damn it, I'm booking the flight right now. Chapter 5. After hanging up the phone, I moved immediately, booking tickets, confirming the itinerary, everything in one smooth motion. Then I rushed back into the room and, at top speed, started stuffing thick coats, thermal wear, my camera, and tripod into my suitcase. The whole process was so fast that even my tears couldn't keep up. Until a burning hot tear splashed onto the back of my hand. While fumbling through packing, I sniffed hard and comforted myself in a thick, nasal voice. Me, myself, look, I missed it last life. I can't miss it again this time, right? These next few days might be tough, traveling nonstop, freezing cold, but me, let's pull ourselves together and capture the most beautiful aurora. Then I'll buy you that bag you've always wanted, okay? I was energetically planning the future while wiping tears in a thoroughly undignified way. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught my reflection in the mirror. Red, swollen eyes, messy hair, yet my hands never stopped, shoving down jackets and camera batteries into the suitcase. This sight was really a little ridiculous and a little heartbreaking, but I knew I was moving forward, even if I was walking forward while crying. At a little past 5 in the morning, before the sky had even begun to lighten, I was already on the plane. Outside the cabin window was a pitch-black night. Inside, the lights were dim, most passengers catching up on sleep, but I felt no drowsiness at all. Staring blankly out the window, a little past 8, the plane landed in Heilongjiang. A blast of dry, biting cold air rushed toward us. After leaving the airport, my friend and I had a steaming bowl of local specialty noodles, warmth spreading through my body from the inside out. My friend couldn't help but speak up. I thought you wouldn't come with me this time. Before, whenever I asked you, you always said you had to stay home and keep an eye on your husband, in case some other woman seduced him. I swallowed the last mouthful of soup, let out a satisfied sigh, and replied calmly, "What man could ever be more important than my career?" My friend's eyes went wide. She scanned me from head to toe suspiciously, as if she'd heard something utterly unbelievable. "That came out of your mouth? I don't buy it at all. What possessed you?" I tugged at the corner of my lips and didn't answer, because even I couldn't quite believe how naturally those words had just left my mouth. Instinctively, I pulled out my phone and unlocked it. The screen lit up. My chat with Santiago was still stuck on the message I'd sent yesterday afternoon. "Husband, you must come home for our 6th anniversary. I've prepared a surprise and made all your favorite dishes." Scrolling upward, the screen filled with dense green chat bubbles. Almost all of them were my one-sided questions, sharing, and waiting. By contrast, his replies were brief and perfunctory. I turned off the screen and slipped the phone back into my pocket. Forget it. Why waste even a shred of energy on someone who no longer belonged to me? After eating, my friend and I boarded a green sleeper train heading for North City. For a full 17 hours, I leaned against the window, watching endless, flowing snowfields pass by outside. The monotonous rhythm of the tracks, the retreating white landscape, the tension in my nerves gradually loosened, and drowsiness crept in. By the time the train arrived, it was already late at night. The moment we got off, the freezing air made us shiver uncontrollably. The land was tightly blanketed in thick snow. Dragging our luggage, we checked into a prearranged inn. One deep sleep carried us straight into the afternoon. Then my friend and I set off for Arctic Village. I wore my thickest down jacket, wrapped in a scarf and hat. I looked like a bulky bear, yet still couldn't block out the bone-piercing cold. Cold air burned as it filled my lungs. Heat packs were stuck to my knees, but they still made faint crackling sounds when I walked. Traveling with us was a young couple we'd met on the train. The girl was lively and cheerful, the boy steady and considerate. Their conversation never stopped along the way. I heard making a wish under the aurora is super effective. The girl clung to her boyfriend's arm, her eyes sparkling. The boy lowered his head to look at her, replying gently, "If we can see the aurora, we'll definitely be happy for a lifetime." They leaned against each other, their white breath intertwining in the air. Their faces were full of anticipation and sweetness. Those smiles were pure and radiant, like two small, warm flames in this icy, snowbound world. I watched them, feeling no jealousy, no bitterness, only a quiet, sincere happiness. How nice. There should be people in this world who are this happy. And me, I came here for myself, with friends, with myself. That, too, is pretty good. Chapter 6. We arrived at the observation site in Arctic Village. The snow beneath our feet already past our ankles. The sky had long since turned pitch black, yet the snowy field was crowded with silhouettes. Most of them were like us, carrying cameras, holding on to the determination that there must be shots to take tonight. Time ticked by, second after second. As midnight approached, the long-awaited curtain of light still did not appear. Instead, a blizzard arrived. Heavy snow lashed against our faces, stinging our cheeks, the visibility growing worse by the minute. Unable to endure it, many people began cursing under their breath as they packed up their equipment and turned to leave. The crowd gradually thinned. My friend and I didn't move. We pressed close to each other, stubbornly facing the wind and snow, tilting our heads up toward the inky black sky. Deep down, we were still waiting for a miracle. The young couple who had come with us were locked tightly in each other's arms amid the raging snowstorm. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught the scene, my heart stirring. Almost instinctively, I raised my camera and adjusted the settings. Through the swirling curtain of snow, I aimed at them. Click. The soft sound of the shutter froze the moment of them clinging to each other in the storm. They noticed my lens. Their faces, red from the cold, broke into radiant smiles. And they even cooperated, flashing me a playful V sign. At the very instant their smiles peaked, fingers raised, the heavens above were suddenly torn open, as if by an invisible hand. One streak, then another. Flame-like red auroras burst forth across the black night sky. They were nothing like the cool, ethereal green auroras I had seen online. These were blazing, intense, brimming with life, like a phoenix spreading its wings, proclaiming the splendor of rebirth after the flames. "It's red!" It's red aurora. The couple cried out in delight. Jumping up and down in the snow, the boy excitedly reached into his pocket, pulled out a small velvet box, and dropped to one knee in the snow. He tried to open it and take out the diamond ring inside, but his fingers were already numb from the cold, and with thick mittens on, he fumbled clumsily, tugging several times without managing to take them off. The two of them looked at each other, both equally awkward. Then suddenly, they burst into laughter. That laughter cut through the wind and snow, filled with pure joy and love. I couldn't help laughing along, though my eyes grew faintly warm. I looked up at the dazzling aurora before me, so beautiful it stole my breath. The red bands of light shifted across the sky like cascading waterfalls. I quickly adjusted my camera again and captured several shots of this rare spectacle. Then, I lowered the camera. For the rest of the time, I chose to experience it only with my own eyes. So beautiful. I suddenly remembered a long time ago, back when Santiago and I were still eating instant noodles in a cramped rental apartment. We had once pointed at a photo of the aurora in a magazine and said that when we had money someday, we would definitely go see it together. Back then, it felt like a dream that required two people to complete. Now, I stood here, witnessing a red aurora far more magnificent than anything in that magazine. A quiet voice inside me softly asked, myself, do you like it? You must really love scenery like this, right? In the future, shall we see many more like it together? The aurora didn't last long. After about 10 minutes, the brilliant red began to fade and dissipate. Like a brief yet glorious dream, my friend leaned over to look at the photos on my camera and couldn't help exclaiming, "Wow, Freya, you really are the best photographer I've ever seen at capturing moments and composition." Her eyes shone with talent like yours. Not traveling around to photograph the beautiful landscapes of this country would be such a waste. I looked at the frozen red aurora on my screen and smiled, my voice calm yet resolute. It's not a waste. In the future, I'll be shooting often, wherever there's beautiful scenery. Remember to call me. My friend froze. After a long moment, she gave my shoulder a firm pat, her eyes reddening. That's really wonderful. You finally don't have to keep revolving around that man of yours anymore. Chapter 7. I returned to the hotel, and my body, numb from the cold, finally began to feel warmth again. At that moment, my phone, which usually had no signal, started vibrating nonstop. I took off my heavy coat and curled up under the warm blankets. Opening WeChat, I saw that Santiago had uncharacteristically sent me a whole string of messages. Freya, why aren't you at home? Why is there only leftover food in the house? What on earth are you doing all day? Not replying? What? You want a divorce? When I still didn't respond, more messages followed in quick succession. Not replying? You think this kind of behavior will get my attention? Childish. If you don't cook, fine. There are plenty of people willing to cook for me. Look better than anything you make, right? A photo was attached underneath. I tapped it open. In the photo, Santiago was grinning at the camera, smiling especially brightly. Behind him, at the kitchen counter, was a slender figure in an apron, busy at work, even without seeing her face. I recognized her immediately. It was his assistant. I looked at the photo, and a single, instinctive thought rose in my mind. Santiago is really greasy. His expression looked like day-old oil, smeared across the screen, so greasy it made my skin crawl. At that thought, a flicker of guilt surfaced in my heart. I'm sorry. Didn't even get you an 8-pack. Drop-dead handsome guy. You really suffered for that. Thinking this, I replied, okay, when I get back, we'll divorce. After the message was sent, Santiago didn't reply right away. At this hour, he was probably enjoying himself in a gentle embrace. I didn't wait. I set my phone to silent and placed it face down on the bedside table. Nothing was more important than getting a proper beauty sleep. The next day, I slept straight through until noon. When I checked my phone, Santiago had sent several messages in a row. Divorce? You're finally willing to do it? What do you mean when you get back? I'm home. Where are you? Where did you go? Freya, you didn't come home last night? Answer the phone. Freya, are you dead? I scrolled through the screen expressionlessly. not bothering to respond. I started packing my luggage, preparing for the return trip. Once the plane landed, I sent Santiago a message. "Where are you?" He replied almost instantly. "Company." I didn't answer. Instead, I hailed a cab and rushed back to what used to be my home at top speed. I opened the wardrobe and began packing. I had already asked a friend in advance to help me rent a one-bedroom apartment with a living room. My plan was simple. Once the divorce agreement was signed that afternoon, I would move straight into the new place. The pace of it all was so fast it almost exceeded my own expectations. In my previous life, the shackles I couldn't break free from despite exhausting myself and enduring endless humiliation. In this life, within just a few days, I had dismantled them cleanly, peeled them away, and was ready to leave. I couldn't help but murmur to myself, myself. So it turns out, you're actually this amazing. Chapter 8. Ever since I found out about Santiago's affair, I had entered his company countless times. Every single time came with hysterical arguments. I had smashed glass here, torn up documents, damaged walls, like a completely unhinged madwoman. Throughout the entire company, probably no one didn't know this. Santiago's wife was a lunatic with absolutely no sense of dignity. Now, as I stepped into the building, gazes gathered on me from all directions. Curious, contemptuous, eager to watch a show. The elevator doors opened. I walked in, and several employees who had been waiting followed me inside. In the cramped space, hushed chatter began to rise. "She's here again. Want to guess which window she's smashing this time?" Tisk. The renovation contractors must be getting rich thanks to her. Quiet. Looks like the show's about to start again. Laughter wrapped around me inside the sealed elevator. I didn't lose control like before. Instead, amid the slight weightlessness of the elevator's steady ascent, I let out a soft laugh. I turned calmly and swept my gaze across their faces. "I'm afraid you'll be disappointed. I didn't come to smash anything today. I came to talk to your boss." I paused, enunciating each word clearly. "About divorce." Ding! The moment my words fell, the elevator arrived at the target floor. I stepped out and strode toward the end of the corridor. I pushed open the office door. What greeted my eyes was an intimate pair. Diana was sitting sideways on Santiago's lap. When she saw me, her cheeks flushed, startled. She jumped up abruptly. Freya, you two talk. I'll step out first." She stammered, head lowered. "No need." My voice was unexpectedly calm. "You can sit. It's fine." My gaze passed over her and landed on Santiago's face. He, on the other hand, was remarkably composed. I took a document out of my bag and gently placed it on the desk. "I've read the agreement your lawyer sent me." I met his slightly mocking gaze. "Santiago, since you're the one at fault, 1 million isn't enough." I paused, then stated my terms. "I want 3 million. You agree? And tomorrow morning at 9, we meet at the Civil Affairs Bureau." Santiago laughed as if he just heard a joke. He tightened his arm, pulling Diana, who was trying to leave, back into his embrace. "Freya, the money I worked so hard to earn, giving you 1 million is already out of old feelings. Already me giving you dignity. And you still dare ask for 3 million? Have I been too lenient these past few years? That you've forgotten who you are? Greedy." I looked into his eyes. Those eyes I had once been utterly obsessed with now held nothing but calculation and coldness. Suddenly, I remembered the early days of his startup. How I put aside my beloved photography, accompanied him day and night to meet clients and inspect factories, smiling through it all, drinking until my stomach bled. I remembered waiting 4 full hours downstairs at a partner's company just to help him secure a deal. All of my dowry and savings had gone into his business. It wasn't until the past 2 years, when he had finally established himself, that I slowly returned to photography. And in the end, I was labeled greedy. He had long forgotten, or perhaps he had never thought it worth remembering at all. But I didn't argue any of this. Digging up old accounts would only make me look more like a resentful woman, completely meaningless. I let out a self-mocking smile, pulled over a guest chair, and sat down opposite him, posture relaxed. "It's fine, Santiago. I have plenty of time. And," I narrowed my eyes slightly, "I have quite a few intimate photos of you and Diana, and others, saved on my phone. High definition, faces included. You tell me, if I were to post a little bit online every few days, add some dramatic captions, don't netizens just love this kind of rich family drama? Who knows? I might even become an internet celebrity and gain a lot of followers. The smile vanished from Santiago's face. The air in the office froze instantly. After a moment, he suddenly let out a scoff, leaned back into his leather chair, and put on a nonchalant expression. Sure, go ahead and post them. I've got plenty of money to suppress trending topics, delete posts, and send legal letters. Worst case, we just don't divorce. Honestly, I think how things are now, each of us playing our own games, isn't bad at all. He was testing my bottom line, and gambling that I wouldn't dare push things to mutual destruction. I met his gaze, and in the end, I made a concession. Truth was, I didn't want to keep wasting time on him at all. 2 million, final price. A brief silence. After weighing the pros and cons, Santiago nodded. Goal achieved. I picked up my bag and turned toward the door. Tomorrow morning at 9, Civil Affairs Bureau. Don't be late. Chapter 9. Stepping out of the office building. The afternoon sunlight was a bit dazzling, yet I felt exceptionally light, as if even the air carried a crisp sense of freedom. I didn't waste any time and immediately contacted a moving company. Watching my belongings pile up in my small new place, a surge of joy rose naturally in my chest. Tomorrow, I would be free. I met up with a friend, got a stylish new haircut, and went shopping for several new outfits. I bought the bag I'd promised as a reward to myself. I planned to greet that brand new version of me with a completely fresh look. The next day, I carefully did my makeup and arrived at the Civil Affairs Bureau right on time. Santiago was leaning against his car door. The moment he saw me, his gaze clearly stalled for a second, mixed with surprise and something hard to define, admiration. He walked over, trying to sound casual, though his words still carried that familiar patronizing tone. Freya, when you dress up, you actually look pretty decent. Would have been even better in a white dress. I couldn't help rolling my eyes. Who cares what you think? You. He choked on his words, his expression instantly darkening. I didn't look at him again and walked straight into the Civil Affairs Bureau. The staff member picked up the stamp, and I looked on with open anticipation. At that moment, my long hair was suddenly yanked violently from behind. A tearing pain shot across my scalp. The person used tremendous force. I was dragged down brutally along with the chair, crashing hard to the floor. Bang! The back of my head slammed against the cold tiles. My vision went dark, my ears ringing loudly. I struggled to open my eyes, and saw my parents' faces, twisted with fury. Chapter 10. Before I could even speak, my father's hands clamped onto my arms like iron pliers, violently hauling me up from the floor. My mother stood to the side, hurling curses non-stop. Divorce? You dare divorce? You useless burden. Do you think it was easy for us to marry you off? And you still have the nerve to talk about divorce? We really spoiled you, didn't we? Your wings have hardened now, sneaking behind our backs to handle the paperwork? You've got some nerve. You damn girl, just wait till we get home. I'll break your legs. My father's strength was terrifying. No matter how desperately I struggled, I couldn't break free. I was dragged half-lifted, half-pulled down the steps. When my mother turned to Santiago, her face changed instantly, plastered with a fawning smile. Santi, oh, I'm so sorry. Truly sorry. Our girl's lost her mind lately. Just talking nonsense. Don't worry, we'll take her back and discipline her properly. I guarantee she won't ever come bother you again. This marriage isn't ending, absolutely not. As she spoke, she hurried after my father. Together, they shoved me forcefully into the back seat of the car parked by the roadside. Bang! The car door slammed shut and locked. I scrambled to the window, pounding desperately against the glass. The Civil Affairs Bureau receded rapidly in my view, growing smaller and smaller, until it disappeared completely. So close. It was so close. What right did they have to treat me like this? Chapter 11. My parents dragged me home, half pulling, half hauling. The moment the door slammed shut, the verbal abuse began. My younger brother lounged on the sofa with one leg crossed over the other, leisurely cracking sunflower seeds, wearing the smug expression of someone enjoying a show. Did a donkey kick your brain? You actually dared bring up divorce with Santiago? At your age, you're not still dreaming about love, are you? My father's temples throbbed violently, spit practically flying into my face. Love? Love is bullshit. Can it fill your stomach? Can it be spent like money? A golden son-in-law like Santiago, people can't even reach him in their dreams. And you're pushing him away? I rubbed the back of my head, which still throbbed faintly. There was probably a swollen lump there. I lifted my head and saw my parents' twisted expressions. My voice was dry and weak. Money, is it really more important than me? My mother laughed out loud, spat disdainfully to the side, and looked at me with contempt. You? What do you even count as? Without Santiago, you're nothing. My eyes widened. It felt as though all the blood in my body had frozen. The disgust and scorn in their eyes stabbed into my heart like needles. Seeing me fall silent, they assumed I'd given in and intensified their lesson. A man fooling around outside, what's the big deal? As a wife, your duty is to take good care of him at home and hurry up and give birth to a son to tie him down. If he's willing to come home, you should be grateful and serve him properly. That's your blessing. Santiago choosing you is an act of grace. Don't be ungrateful. An act of grace? Grateful? The rage I had suppressed for 2 lifetimes finally burst through every last shred of reason. Why should I? I sprang to my feet and, with all my strength, flipped over the coffee table in front of me. Glass cups, fruit trays, ashtrays crashed to the floor in a clatter, sunflower seed shells flying everywhere. Under my family's stunned gazes, I spun around and rushed into the kitchen, grabbing the cleaver used for chopping bones. Gripping it tightly in my hand, I turned back, staring at them unblinkingly. How interesting. He cheats, and you speak up for him? Then go live with him yourselves. We're all human, why should I have to bow and scrape just to please him? Santiago, who the hell does he think he is? They were intimidated by the knife in my hand, rendered speechless for a moment. You only know how to tear me down, right? I raised my voice, venting years of pent-up grievance and fury. You think I'm worthless, that I can't live without a man. Is that it? I bent down and picked up the mop from the floor, knife in one hand, mop in the other. My gaze swept across the living room. That 70-inch flat-screen TV, I'd bought it with the prize money from my first photography award. That double-door refrigerator, I'd saved up for it by doing shoots for others on weekends. Everything in this house, from the furniture and appliances down to the pots and bowls, was bought by me. This house, what isn't paid for by me? I swung the mop and smashed it into the expensive television. Bang! Crash! The screen shattered on impact. You don't seriously think all this was charity from Santiago, do you? Clang! I smashed the refrigerator door next, leaving a deep dent. Using my stuff, spending my money, and you still dare look down on me? I cursed as I smashed, leaving destruction in my wake. My father's face turned ashen with rage. He flew into a fury and grabbed the mop handle from the corner, ready to strike me, only to stop short, forced back by the gleaming cleaver in my hand. My mother wailed and cursed, calling me a white-eyed ingrate, crazy, a curse upon the family. My younger brother, afraid of getting hurt, fled back into his room. This chaotic, desperate farce finally came to an end with the arrival of the police. Most likely, the neighbors couldn't take it anymore and called them. Chapter 12. After we arrived at the police station, my parents shouted angrily, demanding that the police arrest me. I calmly showed the officers the purchase records on my phone. Officer, I can provide purchase histories and payment receipts for every item that was damaged here. All of them are my personal property. I was dealing with my own belongings. What's wrong with that? The facts were clear. Ownership was indisputable. After understanding the situation, the police had no grounds to punish me for handling my own property. Seeing their scheme fall apart, my parents trembled with rage, pointing at my nose and cursing. Unfilial daughter, we raised you for nothing. Get lost. We'll just pretend we never had a daughter like you. I looked at them coldly, brushed the dust off my clothes, and said, all right, then let it be as you wish. From today on, I'll consider myself an orphan, and you can pretend you never gave birth to me. With that, I walked out of the police station, hailed a taxi, and didn't look back at them again. Chapter 13. Once in the car, I slumped into the seat, utterly exhausted. My parents' favoritism toward my brother, their eyes and hearts holding only him, wasn't something I learned today. Before, I had still clung to a ridiculous sliver of hope. Now, the mask had been torn off. Fine. At last, I could say a clean, complete goodbye to the thing called family. Leaning against the window, I spoke softly to that battered yet stubbornly resilient version of myself inside my heart. Me, myself, you really are incredibly brave. Just then, my phone rang. It was my friend, Freya. Her voice was bright and energetic. Want to go hiking tonight? We'll catch the city night view, then watch the sunrise tomorrow morning. The light this season is insane, perfect for photos. Let's go! I agreed without a second's hesitation. I needed a full-throttle escape. I needed to stand somewhere high and look far into the distance. After hanging up, I glanced at the time on my phone. The Civil Affairs Bureau wasn't closed yet. A powerful impulse seized me. Driver. I straightened up. We're not going back to the previous address. Please turn around. Right now. There was still time to get divorced. Chapter 14. I pushed open the door to Santiago's office and said bluntly, "We're getting divorced." Seeing me, he was clearly taken aback for a moment. Then a mocking smile appeared on his face. "Divorce again? Did you forget how embarrassing you were this morning?" I walked up to his desk, planted both hands on its edge, and looked down at him. "Don't think I don't know you told them on purpose." Santiago's gaze flickered. He cleared his throat awkwardly and avoided my eyes. "Divorce is a big deal. Of course the elders need to agree. Besides, Freya, do we really need to push things this far? Isn't how things are now pretty good? We each do our own thing. Don't interfere with each other. If you want, you can even find someone outside." Santiago. I cut him off. My voice wasn't loud, but it was icy. "I don't have the time or the interest to play this kind of game with you. Listen carefully." I leaned forward slightly, enunciating every word. "Today, this divorce must happen. If you try to stall again, or pull any tricks, I'll package all those intimate photos of you and Diana, and you and the others, and send them to the inbox of every single employee in this company, from the cleaners to the executives. Not a single one missed. I don't care about the consequences. At worst, it's invasion of privacy and paying compensation. I can afford that. But have you thought about it? When the entire company, along with your partners and competitors, are all gleefully discussing Santiago's spicy scandals, what happens to your reputation, your company's stock price, the image you've worked so hard to build?" Santiago's face darkened. He stared at me intensely. After a long pause, he ground his teeth and said, "Freya, you really disgust me. I never thought you could stoop to this level." "Fine. Divorce it is. Right now." "Perfect," I replied calmly. This time, there were no obstacles. When the red booklet was finally in my hands, my vision blurred instantly. Scalding tears poured out, large drops falling onto the certificate. Seeing this, Santiago let out a mocking laugh. "What? Regret it now? If you regret it, tear it up." I could still. "No." I wiped away my tears hard and shook my head. "I'm happy." I clutched the divorce certificate tightly, as if it were a priceless treasure. "I'm finally free. How wonderful. Me, myself. We have finally left behind everyone and everything that ever caused us pain." Chapter 15. In the early hours of that very night, I slung my heavy photography gear over my back, met up with my friend, and began our night hike. The mountain path was rugged, our breath turning into white mist in the freezing air. At the moment dawn broke, I captured a series of magnificent sunrise shots. The first ray of morning light tore through the clouds, as if drawing open the curtain on my brand new life. I posted my favorite one on social media. Unexpectedly, the photo went viral. People were deeply moved by the vitality of breaking free from darkness, liking and sharing it in droves. I seized the momentum. I posted the series of fiery red auroras I'd shot in North City, like a phoenix reborn from the flames. My account completely blew up. At 30 years old, I finally made a small name for myself in the photography world. This wasn't just recognition of my skills, it felt more like a belated echo from fate itself. Riding this wave, I opened my own photography studio. On its very first day, an unexpected guest arrived. It was Miss Sue, the daughter of a well-known local tycoon. She had a gentle, refined aura and wanted me to shoot her wedding photos. I was overjoyed. If I could do a great job, with Miss Sue's connections and influence, the studio's future clientele would be practically secured. So I poured in all my passion, researching, preparing, and designing a shoot plan tailored perfectly to her temperament. Just the script and scene concepts alone kept me up all night, striving for absolute perfection. However, on the third day, Miss Sue came to see me on her own. With an apologetic expression, she said, "I'm sorry. I might not be able to have you shoot my wedding photos after all. You can keep the deposit as a breach of contract fee. No need to return it." I froze for a moment. My heart sank sharply, but I still maintained my professionalism and asked softly, "Miss Sue, may I ask the reason? Was there something you were dissatisfied with in the proposal I provided?" She looked conflicted. After hesitating, she spoke frankly, "I mentioned you to my fiancé. He said he's heard of you. Your ex-husband, Santiago, is quite well known in their circle, and you, some of your past, they know about as well." She paused, her tone tinged with reluctance. "My fiancé said that your reaction to your ex-husband's affair, though intense, might be understandable, but the issue is, you yourself had a failed marriage. He worries that someone whose own marriage wasn't happy might find it hard to truly understand or capture the happiness within a marriage, to photograph the kind of sweetness we're hoping for." I listened quietly, my fingers curling slightly beneath the table before slowly relaxing again. So that was it. Even after the divorce, the past still clung to me like a shadow. I didn't rush to argue or complain. I simply took a deep breath, lifted my head, and looked at her calmly and sincerely. "Miss Sue, thank you for your honesty. I also understand your fiancé's concerns. But there's one thing I'd like to clarify. As a photographer, what I record has never been the abstract concept of a happy marriage. What I capture are happy people, the real, moving emotions that loving people reveal in a single moment. I admit that my own marriage was a failure, but my life has been filled with countless moments of happiness. And through my lens, I've witnessed and preserved many moments of happiness belonging to others. The unhappiness of my marriage and my ability to perceive happiness and capture emotion are two completely different things." I met her gaze and continued, "I believe you're choosing to enter marriage not because you've foreseen a guaranteed happy future. On the contrary, it's because you're genuinely feeling happiness right now that you're making this decision, isn't that so? Happiness is the cause. Marriage is the result. My misfortune was merely the result of that particular relationship. But when I decided to get married back then, the anticipation and joy I felt were no different from what you're feeling now." Of course, I softened my tone, giving her full respect. "You have every right to choose a photographer who makes both you and your fiancé feel at ease and well-matched. No matter what your final decision is, I will completely respect it." After hearing this, Miss Sue fell silent for a moment. The hesitation in her eyes seemed to loosen slightly. After a long while, she nodded gently. "I understand what you mean. I'll think about it some more." After seeing Miss Sue off, my friend, who had been holding her breath listening nearby, slumped her shoulders and sighed. Sigh, the duck that was practically cooked still flew away. The prejudice in this industry is really hard to break. I turned around, patted her shoulder, and smiled instead. "It's fine. Life has a high margin for error. If one path doesn't work, we just take another. Worst case, I close the studio and become a landscape photographer, travel the world. Even freer. No big deal." As I was speaking, my phone screen lit up with a new message. It was from the couple we'd met under the Aurora in North City. "Girl, I saw your moments. Congrats on the opening of your studio. We absolutely love the photos you took of us in North City. We've already had them printed and hung them in our future home. And we're getting ready to get married soon. We wanted to ask you about wedding photos. Do you have availability?" My friend and I exchanged a look. The next second, we threw our arms around each other and jumped in place, ecstatic. "That's amazing! See? When the mountains pile up and the rivers wind on, you think there's no way forward. Then, where willows grow dense and flowers bloom bright, another village suddenly appears." Chapter 16. In the end, Miss Sue did not choose me as her wedding photographer, but fortunately, the couple I met in North City chose me without hesitation. The wedding photos I carefully shot for them were shared joyfully on their social media. That set of natural, sincere, story-filled photographs brought my studio an unexpected surge of attention. My career gradually got on track, thriving step by step, and I myself was filled with motivation, because this time, I was fighting for my own career, for myself. Later, I accepted a live interview. The host asked me, Ms. Freya, many people know that your ex-husband, Mr. Santiago, is very well known in the business world. Online, there are also some videos and photos circulating from your past, well, moments where you were quite emotional for such a rather famous past. Would you mind talking about it? I looked into the camera, my smile unchanged. Of course I don't mind, that's a part of my life. The host followed up with a sharper question. Then how did you make the decision to leave your ex-husband and turn fully toward your photography career? That kind of transition must not have been easy. I thought for a moment, then spoke calmly. I think it's because I finally figured something out. Our eyes are meant to look at the stars and the sea, the changing seasons, and the warmth of human life, not to stare at whether someone has replied to a message. Photography, in a sense, is an effort to restore and preserve the beauty that truly exists in what our eyes can see. So I decided to move my gaze away from one person and turn it back toward the vast world. At that moment, a conspicuous bullet comment suddenly floated across the screen. It carried obvious malice, putting on an independent woman persona in real life. But back then she was still ready to live or die for a man. This kind of thing is just for show. The host's expression shifted slightly. I looked at that bullet comment and suddenly laughed. This comment is actually pretty interesting. I turned to the camera, calm and composed, without a trace of offense in my expression. I honestly think that those past experiences, even if some of them were not very dignified, or could even be described as downright messy, truly shaped who I am today. The host couldn't help but press further. When you see others judging your past pain like this, don't you feel angry? No. I shook my head, my gaze steady, because the person who made those choices back then was me, the one who got carried away by emotions, who burned through all her passion and dignity for someone who wasn't worth it. That was also me. I don't think there's anything there that needs to be denied or hidden. Even if someone were to mock me with those things to my face, I wouldn't be angry. I paused, every word clear and firm, because I unconditionally accept everything I've ever done and every road I've ever walked. The good, the bad, the glorious, the disgraceful, all of it together is what makes up the person sitting here today. Just then, another bullet comment flew across the screen. Sister, what you said is so good. I love you. You're the heroism of my girlhood. I looked at that message and smiled, then said gently but earnestly, thank you. I also love myself. But young girl, your heroism is actually yourself. You and yourself are the ones who truly stand and fall together. The live stream fell silent for a brief moment, and then genuine applause rang out. Chapter 17. After the interview ended, I walked out of the broadcasting building. Just as I stepped down the stairs, a figure emerged from the shadows nearby and blocked my path. It was Santiago. He seemed to have deliberately waited here for me. I didn't slow down and tried to walk past him, but he shifted sideways and blocked me again. Freya, he said, his voice slightly hoarse. I'm sorry. I've thought about it again and again, and I still feel that I owe you a proper apology. I stopped and looked up at him. Suddenly, it felt a little ridiculous. An apology? Santiago, put away that cheap sense of remorse. Your sorry has long since meant nothing to me. I saw the flicker of surprise in his eyes and continued calmly. The person you wronged the most isn't the me standing here now. It's the you from 10 years ago. Back in that rented apartment, you betrayed the promises you once made, and you also betrayed the version of yourself that hadn't yet been corrupted by fame and money. So save your apology for him. With that, I didn't look at the complicated expression on his face any longer. I walked past him and headed toward the car parked by the roadside. The night wind brushed against my face, cool and refreshing. From that moment on, Santiago and I never crossed paths again. Chapter 18. The next time I saw him was in the financial section of social news. The headline read, Renowned entrepreneur Santiago suspected of tax evasion. Case transferred to prosecutors for investigation according to law. The accompanying photo showed him being taken away by law enforcement officers. His head was lowered. Not a trace left of his former high-spirited confidence. The report also mentioned that the whistleblower was his former mistress and assistant. They had fallen out over unequal distribution of benefits. His company was thrown into chaos as a result. When this news notification popped up, I was in my studio selecting client photos. My finger paused on the screen for 2 seconds. Then I laughed out loud. How wonderful. What goes around, comes around. I put my phone down, opened a shopping app, and happily began picking out gifts for myself. I should buy my older self a bag as a reward. Buy myself a pair of professional hiking boots for my next snow mountain shoot. Stock up 2 bottles of top-tier anti-aging cream for myself. Buy myself a new camera, and treat myself to a hot pot meal. As for my parents, for the sake of that useless precious son of theirs, they ran around begging for help, worried themselves sick, and even sold off family assets. They tried to contact me, calls, messages, but I had long since blocked them all. Later, they took me to court, demanding alimony. When the verdict came down, I was required to pay 400 yuan per month. I am a law-abiding citizen. I strictly follow the judgment, never a cent less, never a cent more. As for whether that 400 is paid at the beginning of the month, mid-month, or on the very last day, that depends entirely on my mood that month. After that, my photography career grew busier and busier, with bookings already scheduled 6 months in advance. Still, I insisted on setting aside time every year to travel and shoot. My lens has captured the lone smoke and setting sun over the northwestern deserts, and recorded the misty rains of water towns. Through my perspective, I have photographed the magnificent land that I so deeply love. All right, that's the end of the story. One last sentence, let me say it again. I love you, myself. See you tomorrow.